Warning: this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lisa Cypers Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lisa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lisa Cypers Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where you will learn about personal agency and positive disruption. My first guest is Dr. Paul Knapper, and this conversation was originally broadcast in March of 2021. He leads a management psychology practice. He's also an author. His client list includes Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, universities, and startups. Dr. Paul Napper has held an advanced fellowship during a 3-year academic appointment at Harvard Medical School. And we're talking about his new book, The Power of Agency, the 7 principles to conquer obstacles, make effective decisions, and create a life on your own terms. Paul, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Let's talk about the definition of agency, because people will say, well, I think I know what that means, but what does it mean in reference to our own lives and self-determination?
It's a great place to start. I mean, agency, as it turns out, is not that familiar to most people. And what it refers to is it's a concept that has been studied by sociologists and psychologists and philosophers for decades, more on the academic side. So if you don't know what it means, don't sweat it. It's fairly new to the average person. But what it means is it's our capacity to make decisions in our lives for ourselves and take our lives then in the desired direction. So it's the capacity to make decisions and then act on those decisions in our lives.
So basically, we're being an agent and representative of our own best interests.
That's exactly right. And for people who are close to the entertainment industry, everyone knows what a sports agent is, or a literary agent, or, an actor's agent, somebody who helps you, right? Somebody who guides you, helps you manage your career, helps negotiate contracts. So it turns out we all have an agent within ourselves that we can activate to help us to advocate for our own selves. And agency gets at that idea. So it's this capacity to make independent, decisions and then act with confidence on those decisions. And so what we write about is there's a lot of things that get in the way of our ability to access that inner agent.
I want to ask a question about that. And when we talk about things that get in the way of our own agencies, are you talking about thoughts and feelings?
We're talking about a lot of things, but yes, thoughts and feelings are, as it turns out, we are, as humans, we're more emotional creatures than we are thinking creatures. So there's a lot of research that's been done over the last 30, 40 years on how we actually think as human beings, how we make decisions in our lives. So there's a lot of new ground to cover for people, I think, to get more familiar with all of that. But, we like to say that in so many respects, each and every one of us is the sum total of all the decisions we make over the course of our lives. And so how we make choices in our lives, which is, again, what agency is all about, becomes that all-defining thing. And how we think, patterns in our thinking, patterns in terms of our emotions, how we feel, how we make sense of our feelings, all of these things affect our level of agency.
And when we talk about thoughts and feelings, although they are very much a part of what makes us up or contributes to our behaviors, they don't always contribute to the best decision making because they are not fact-based.
That's right. And, we as humans, how we generally think and make decisions is through intuition, which is shocking to most people, because most people think, well, I don't think of myself as necessarily a highly intuitive thinker, but in fact, most of the decisions we make are through what's called fast thinking. Fast thinking is more automatic. It's more, again, more intuitive. Which is kind of rule of thumb, just something feels a lot like something else. And so we're kind of off to the races making decisions. For smaller decisions, like, what kind of vegetables should I, buy at the grocery store today? Obviously it's not so consequential. For larger decisions, more important life decisions, the capacity to think more logically for ourselves, to fully use our reasoning skills as people, becomes a lot more important. And what can happen is a lot of people haven't developed that skill, right? They haven't learned how to do the pivot from thinking more intuitively versus, engaging in more of their critical reasoning.
So some of our listeners might think, well, that just sounds a little woo-woo here when we're talking about the intuition, trusting the gut. But the research really backs up what you are saying.
Absolutely. No, the research is clear. We have several chapters in the book that delve into all of this. This is based on the research of primarily of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, two very well-known psychologists who did a lot of research on how humans use reason and how they actually make decisions. And so it's based on science. It's based on research. And what we try to do in our book is bring this down to earth so people can make, practical sense of it and actually use these important research findings in their lives each and every day to make better decisions. So
agency plays a huge role in every area of our life. The way we partner, the way we parent, the way we perform at work. Talk a little bit about ways that one can strengthen agency.
Well, you said it, very well. Our level of agency affects every aspect of our lives. It affects the quality of our work, the quality of our relationships. It certainly has a direct bearing on our level of happiness. As it turns out, it feels good to have agency, to use agency, to have access to our agency. You can think about agency as, the sort of pathway to your own personal power and creativity in your life. So when it's blocked, when you feel stuck, you feel adrift, you feel thwarted, it's not a good feeling. And what we found is a lot of people find themselves in that place today. The word that keeps bubbling up is overwhelm. People feel overwhelmed so much more of the time today than ever before. And when you feel overwhelmed for extended periods of time, it by definition raises anxiety levels. And when anxiety level increases, it compromises our capacity to think and reflect. So we have put together 7 principles in our book, boiled it down to the absolute most essential things for people to focus on that help them to regain sort of a calm and centered footing in their lives so that they can better access their thinking skills and make better decisions, and then obviously act with greater confidence and get unstuck and also experience less overwhelm.
Can you share those 7 points?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll run through them kind of briefly. If you want to touch on any of them, we can come back to them.
Yeah, definitely.
The first one, they sound a little wonky. Maybe a little because they're sort of science based. The book is, again, it's based on sound science and research. The first principle is we call control stimuli. So this is about, controlling what gets into your brain, which is, being a gatekeeper for yourself in terms of not allowing an excess amount of stimulation to enter your brain. The second principle we call associate selectively. This is about surrounding yourself with people who are encouraging, who are supportive, people who help you learn new things, people who challenge you. The third principle we call move. Move is about taking care of your physical health. It's about ensuring that you engage in an appropriate amount of movement in activity, not necessarily just exercise, but just movement, physical movement in your life, that you eat healthy food, that you rest adequately, and that essentially you are taking care of the physical functioning of your body. The fourth principle, and then those first three, by the way, we call the behavioral principles. They're more about how you behave, and they involve choices you make about specific behaviors you engage in. The last four principles we call cognitive principles. They involve how you think and how you process emotion. So the fourth one we call position yourself as a learner. This is about understanding better how you learn in your life. Everyone learns differently, and some people learn better through some modes than others. So it's understanding better how you learn, and it's also about how to more actively position yourself to learn each and every day in your life. The fifth principle we call manage your emotions and beliefs.
I'm laughing.
Right. And this is one of the harder ones, as I know you know.
I know.
This, again, it's back to the whole idea we are emotional creatures. How we manage our emotions and our beliefs becomes a really critical determinant to how much agency we have in our lives. So this idea of emotions can't be entirely controlled, but they actually can be managed. And, the way to manage them is first, obviously to identify what I'm feeling, try and get a gauge on why I'm feeling it. And then thirdly, what do I do with it? Do I need to act on it? Do I need to just let it pass and fade away? So this principle essentially focuses on self-awareness. Beliefs are something also that, how we as human beings develop beliefs, why we develop beliefs, what function it serves in our lives, and also how to utilize our beliefs to help us rather than hinder us. Because at certain times, beliefs become self-limiting.
Yes.
Beliefs are meant to be updated as we learn more and grow as humans. A lot of times people don't know that. They don't update their beliefs frequently enough, and consequently they're held back. So that's probably one of the most challenging of the 7 principles. The final 2 principles, the 6th one we call check your intuition. So this gets into how you make use of intuition. We start with what intuition is, what it's not. A lot of people don't understand really what intuition is, right? I mean, a lot of people, like you alluded to earlier, think it's fluffy. It's like, what is it, like akin to astrology? Is it?
Yes.
Like reading my horoscope every day? Well, no, actually, intuition is a very important part of how we think. And if we understand what it is and how to access it and use it in the best ways in our lives, it can really improve the quality of the choices we make. The 7th and final principle we call deliberate, then act. The whole idea of deliberation is to reflect on something and also employ critical thinking skills. So critical thinking skills have been now defined as one of the most important skills of the 21st century. So our ability to use logic and reasoning as we make important choices, just decisions that are going to have life-changing effects on ourselves. This is a skill that we absolutely need for the 21st century. So this last final principle of agency goes into great length on how other experts in fields where they're required to make important decisions, how they actually make those decisions and how you can learn from them.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Paul Knapper. We're talking about his new book, The Power of Agency, the 7 Principles to Conquer Obstacles, Make Effective Decisions, and Create a Life on Your Own Terms. To learn more, please visit powerofagency.com, and on Twitter, you can connect with Paul Knapper at Dr. Paul Knapper. We'll take that brief pause, and then we'll return to the conversation with Paul Knapper. Before we take that break, let's talk about summer sadly winding down and that it's time to get back down to business. How are you planning to gear up for fall and attract the right people to your team to help your business fire on all cylinders? Right now, our team is actively seeking advisory board members for a startup venture, and LinkedIn Jobs is my go-to network to find the right talent. Create a job posting in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs that will reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then, add your job and the purple-colored #hiring to your own LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your own network can help you target the right people to hire. Simple tools make it easy to focus on attracting the right skills and experience so you can quickly evaluate and prioritize your best candidates. That is why small businesses everywhere rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering high-quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/HH. That's linkedin.com/HH to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now let's take that break. We'll be right back, and that is a promise.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lisa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
And we're back continuing the conversation with Dr. Paul Knapper that originally aired in March of 2021. We're talking about personal agency and positive disruption. Let's get back to it. So, Paul, we're talking about being agent self, like how we can be the best advocate for our own best interests, whether it's for ourselves, our families, or in our businesses, in our companies. Talk a little bit about how a high level of discernment, and I'm going back to the 7th point in this process, which taps into critical thinking, how discernment really is a requirement and how discernment is something that many of us lack. We could use a little strengthening of that emotional muscle.
Absolutely. No, this is a very important point. I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot in the book is that, we all are trying to adapt to the demands our environment places on us. So whether we're talking about our family lives, our business lives, whatever we do in our lives, there are demands around us that we are being required to adapt to. And the first order of business is to make sense of those demands. What is occurring around me? Can I define it? Can I define it accurately? And can I then figure out what it's requiring that I do about it? So in business, what that essentially involves is the capacity to define reality and then to make discerning judgments based on what the reality is. So similarly in people's personal lives, making sense of what is happening and what you should do about it becomes a very essential matter of not just survival, but really a matter of how much happiness and fulfillment people have in their lives. And it's become more challenging to make sense of the environment that we all inhabit. What we say in our book is, we're all in over our heads these days.
Yeah,
from a cognitive standpoint, there's so much information coming at us. It's kind of a cliche right now to say, oh yeah, we live in the information age, but we do. And what it means to live in the information age is that more and more information comes at us every day. And it's our capacity to make sense of that and actually make discerning judgments that defines the quality of our lives, whether it's our personal life, whether it's our work life. So how we do that, and we actually, one of the people we interview in this very last chapter, the chapter on deliberate then act, we interview a judge, a woman who talks about a very difficult decision she had to make where she struggled to make a discerning judgment. It actually involved a trial that she was presiding over as the judge. And it was a murder trial, and there were all kinds of emotions whipping around, and how she was able to, in the midst of all that pressure, make a discerning judgment, how she went about doing that. is something that all of us can learn from, because, there are people who make life and death decisions each and every day as part of their work. And we can learn a lot from those people because, they have so much on the line that the quality of their judgments, matters so greatly that they've learned over time to become better decision makers, to make more discerning judgments. So for all of us, this is a really important thing, and there's a lot in our book about how do we do this? I mean, how do we put this into practice so that we can arrive at more discerning judgments?
So, Paul, talk a little bit about the judge's process of fine-tuning her own agency in her decision-making process, because when you're talking about holding someone's life or death in your hands, in the case perhaps of a murder trial, there must be some very interesting steps that she takes.
Well, first of all, the decision that she needed to make in this case, in this trial, was whether to offer bail as a possibility. So to allow the person to be able to post bail and be released. In most murder trials, that's kind of unheard of. In most murder trials, people are not allowed to go out on bail. In this case, it was very complex because the woman who was being charged was a mother, a single mother with a child at home. And this judge knew that this was going to have profound effects, not just on the woman being charged, but also on a young child. So she basically, how she went about trying to make a discerning judgment is she looked at precedent. How frequently is bail, given to murder trial suspects? Second, she also surveyed the facts of the case. She got herself to a quiet place and really did a deep dive on all the known facts around this case to try to get a gauge on what is the likelihood that this person is guilty of this crime, and how much exists based on the facts. Secondly, she surveyed other judges. She talked to some other judges and got their thoughts and their impressions and their opinions. Third, she gave thought as well to the prevailing environment. It just so happened this trial was occurring during a time in America where it was a real tough on crime, kind of zeitgeist, when, there was a lot, being written in the media about how important it was to be tough on crime. So she knew if she issued this woman bail, there may be a strong backlash. So she kind of got her ducks in a row, and she gave a lot of thought to all the most relevant variables. And she also checked her own emotion, and she tried to prevent herself from being biased. So she was aware, emotionally self-aware of the fact, hey, this woman being charged with murder is also a woman, also a mother, and she understood, the judge understood she could relate very much to that person, but she also didn't want to allow any of those feelings to cloud her judgment. So she kind of weighed all of these factors, and she ended up coming to a decision to grant the woman bail. So the woman was able to be out on bail and take care of her child while she awaited trial. And it turned out in the trial itself, that the woman was acquitted of all charges. And she said she felt a really great sense of relief, the judge, at the end of the trial, because the prosecutor in the case, she said, made it very clear that he thought that justice had been served. And in other words, that this woman was in fact not guilty of having committed that crime. So, but she made a decision, a tough decision that went against prevailing norms. So, she made a discerning judgment that, again, was a tough decision to make because she knew she was going to get a lot of flack for it. But she stuck to her guns. She made the decision. And at the end of the day, she felt really good about the decision she made.
It's interesting because as you're telling the story, the words that pop into my mind is that she went through a collaborative process to get to that agency. In other words, that she outsourced support. She approached it from several different angles, not just, oh, well, what is my gut telling me? The gut played into it after she had done her homework, after she had done the research.
That's right. No, she used multiple levels of intelligence here to both, check on her intuition, but also use critical reasoning skills and really do a deep dive on all of the actual known facts in the case. She reached out to other judges and, trusted advisors to her and got some of their thoughts and their guidance. And she also had a level of emotional awareness where she tried to check her own bias, right? Because was she feeling just a sense of identification with this younger woman who was on trial, and was that guiding her decision in the wrong way because she identified with this person? So she tried to keep all of those things in check. And I think, again, what was so satisfying to her in this one particular case is that at the end of the day, it worked out really well. She was able to make an independent decision on her own to grant bail and allow this woman to take care of her child. And ultimately, the woman was cleared of all charges. So obviously, she felt she had made the best decision.
Let's talk a little bit about how this translates to the personal level, because you mentioned several times about the correlation of agency and happiness. And because, the show is Harvesting Happiness, we probably need to kind of circle back to that what we tend to feel most happy when we feel most in charge of ourselves and our lives.
That's exactly it. You hit on that. And that's actually a very profound thought that you just stated there, very, very simply and matter-of-factly. It turns out that when we have access to our agency, it feels really good.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because, we feel more confident and we feel more in charge and we feel more free to act in our lives. So, the whole idea of agency is developing the capacity to think more clearly for yourself and make more independent choices, more independent decisions in your life that take your life in the desired direction, the direction that's most meaningful to you. And at the end of the day, all the research on happiness correlates to this idea of when people feel they're doing something meaningful with their lives, they feel a much greater sense of happiness and fulfillment. So that's really, at the end of the day, the gold standard is, am I doing with my life what feels most meaningful to me? Is it in accord with my values and my interests? Am I having fun? Am I feeling a sense of confidence that I can take action in my life? Because when you do, the chances are you're feeling much happier.
Dr. Paul Napper, thanks for joining us on the show. To learn more about Dr. Napper's work, please visit powerofagency.com. The book we were speaking of today is The Power of Agency, the 7 Principles to Conquer Obstacles, Make Effective Decisions, and Create a Life on Your Own Terms. To connect with Dr. Napper, please do so on Twitter at Dr. Paul Napper. Paul, thanks for joining me on the show. Please come back and hang out with me. There's so much more to talk about.
A terrific start to the discussion. And thanks again. You asked great questions. Really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks. Here comes that pause. We'll be right back. And that is a guarantee.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and follow Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
We're back continuing the exploration of personal agency and positive disruption. My next guest is Daniel Burrus, and this conversation originally aired in June of 2018. Daniel Burrus is hailed as one of the world's leading futurists on global trends and innovations. He has delivered more than 2,800 keynote speeches worldwide and is a strategic advisor who has guided executives from Fortune 500 companies as well as small and medium-sized businesses to develop paradigm-shifting strategies for capitalizing on enormous untapped opportunities.
Burris practices what he teaches. He started 6 companies, 4 were national leaders in the first year, and 5 were profitable in year 1. And that is an accomplishment for those business owners who are listening. Dan, welcome. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Let's talk about the Anticipatory Organization, because we were chatting prior to the start of the interview, and you wanting to really clarify how applicable this book is for everybody. And I couldn't agree more.
Well, absolutely. I mean, basically things happen to us from the outside in and we react. But to control our destiny, we need to create change from the inside out. It's an opposite approach. And technology change, is accelerating at an exponential rate. But if you're moving exponentially fast in the wrong direction, you can get into trouble exponentially faster. In other words, how do we find direction? And so far, think of it as 2 sides of a coin. A lot of us have learned how to be agile, in other words, react quickly to changes that are taking place or problems that occur. But that is a reactive strategy. And what I'm doing for individuals, for leaders, and for organizations is showing you the other side of the coin. It's a new competency, and that is the ability to anticipate problems before you have them so you can pre-solve them and not have them in the first place. Anticipate disruptions and change before it happens, turning it into a choice, and even anticipate amazing new opportunities.
So what I hear you saying is you're helping us have a crystal ball in a certain sense. When we anticipate, we're trying to foresee what could possibly happen. Yes, I think it's really helpful, but how do we do that? How do we actually anticipate every angle of a situation?
Well, I think the key is you cannot accurately predict everything. The key is you can accurately predict far more than you realize, and enough to make a very big difference. And I've done that, and this is actually book number 7. The others have been New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestsellers. So I'm not new at this game. I've been doing this for over 35 years. So it's a proven methodology. So let me just kind of give it to you very quickly. There's no shortage of trends about where the future is going. And after all, we're going to spend the rest of our life in the future. It's good to think about it a little bit. The trouble is, which ones are going to happen? So one of the keys to the new book is separating what I call the hard trends that are fully predictable from the soft trends that are the ifs and maybes, those things that might happen. And if you have certainty about something that will happen, this will happen, you have the confidence to make a bold move. You have the ability to say yes, rather than I'll have to get another opinion or think about this. So by seeing what will happen, and there are 3 categories very quickly. One is demographics. For example, there's 78 million baby boomers, and they're going to get older. They're not going to get younger. They're going to get older. That's a hard trend. And we can predict a lot of problems as well as a lot of opportunities based on that. There's also government regulation as a second of the 3 categories. And there are amazing opportunities in regulation. Most of us just don't like regulation, so we never find them. This is the way to see them, even for individuals. And third is, again, being able to see technology. And without being a technologist, you don't need to know the physics of a telephone to use it. You have to know it exists and then creatively use it. And I think we've got amazing untapped creativity in all of our listeners out there. What I want to do is help you to create your ideal future by becoming anticipatory.
So the steps beyond identifying these 3 categories of the trends, the government regulations, and technology, what do we do next? Okay, we've recognized, certain things are trending. Wallabies are trending. Now what?
Good, thank you. Let me give you an example. Well, let's make it solid. I live most of the year in California, and in January there were 1,000 new laws that were passed. One of those laws said that within 3 years, this is a law, a real law, kindergartners and first graders, half of their reading within 3 years has to be nonfiction. Right now, it's all fiction. And when you hear that as a law, you say, well, why are they doing that? This is stupid. Aren't there more important things they should be doing? But I believe in doing the opposite. Instead of all the things you don't like, look at what you do like. So a 28-year-old teacher in San Diego made 3 phone calls. She called the San Diego School District, the Los Angeles School District, and the San Francisco School District and said, hey, you got this law, it takes place in 3 years. If I provide the nonfiction books for your kindergartners and first graders, would you be interested? And they said, yeah, we didn't know how we were going to do that. To make a long story short, they underwrote her business, guaranteed them being huge customers, and she didn't have to go on Shark Tank. In other words, there's a method for finding the opportunity instead of seeing the crisis. We think the good old days of brick and mortar retail are behind us. And if you think that way, you'll close 170 Sears stores, as the CEO did. But if you think the good old days of brick and mortar retail are ahead of us, they just don't look like the days behind us, you might buy Whole Foods, as Amazon did. So what is your view of the future? And as a matter of fact, if you can give me 1 second on that, let me just give you this concept because I think it ties into the foundation of your program. And that is how our kids, how we view the future to a great extent shapes how we act in the present. If you, some people are buying Apple right now and some people are selling it because of their future view of Apple. Some kids are thinking of going to college and others are thinking of going to drugs because of their future view. How you view the future shapes how you act. And by the way, how you act will shape your future. Your future view will determine the future you. And I believe our future view is based on the past, not all the amazing opportunities ahead of us. And all those amazing opportunities are fogged in by the news. And I want us to blow away the fog and start seeing the amazing opportunity for every person listening to this show, your families, and your businesses.
I love your message. I absolutely love it because it's really about perspective, right? Do you see your life as opportunity or adversity? And what you're saying is that it's not just taking an internal view, but it's actually calling upon us to take an external view, to pay attention to what we see, to read the news, to read the newspaper even. What a concept. And see what's going on around us and see where our interests can then match with opportunities we can create.
Exactly. There's an old statement, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always had. But in today's world, if you do what you've always done, you'll get less than you've always had because the world has changed. We got a unique human tipping point that we've never reached ever before in human history. We're doing things today that were impossible just 2 years ago, which, by the way, means 2 years from now, we're doing things that are impossible today. This book shows you how to see those things before they happen. And this is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about this book. If all we're doing is solving problems after they happen in a world of exponentially driven change, we're not going to be happy campers on this planet. I want us all as individuals to, number one, see the problems before they happen and pre-solve them. And secondly, to actively shape the future rather than passively receive it. Oh. You see, hope is not a strategy. And I want to influence what we can influence. And certainty is a key to doing that. That's why I wrote the Anticipatory Organization. Because by learning to anticipate, you have certainty in an uncertain world. And very quickly, strategy, whether it's personal or business, that's based on uncertainty has high risk. Strategy based on certainty has low risk and high reward. So it's really, how do you find certainty in a seemingly uncertain world?
And we're talking with Daniel Burrus about his new book, The Anticipatory Organization, Turn Disruption and Change into Opportunity and Advantage. And he's talking about the future view determines the future you. And I love that phrase. I'm gonna, with your permission, I'm gonna reuse that because it's really wonderful. And it's true. It's true. It's like wherever you focus your attention is where you will find yourself.
Absolutely. And I believe that our future view, and I'm talking about all of us now, and I'm especially talking about your kids' future view, it's based on a rear view mirror view of the future rather than a windshield. You see, why is your windshield larger than your rear view mirror? Helps to know what's up ahead. And when we all are thinking about the future, we're using our past perspective. Everything that we've known, everything that we've learned, But today, we're in a game-changing world. The game is being changed, and it can be positive or negative. It's up to us. You see, the soft trend, the if or maybe part, is, will the future be better than the past? Well, I don't know. I can't predict that, but I can predict with certainty that there are tools out there to create a far better world than we've ever had. Soft trends, the reason I like them, you can change them. So if things aren't doing that well for you, hey, change it. And I've got a good example I can give you after we take a little break, but I want you to see the power of both hard trends and the soft trend, because hard trends will happen. The good news about soft trends is you can change them if you don't like them.
And let's take that break now to learn more about Daniel Burrus and all of his books, including the newest, The Anticipatory Organization, Turn Disruption and Change into Opportunity and Advantage. You can find him at www.burris.com, on Twitter at Daniel Burrus, and on Facebook, that page is also Daniel Burrus.
We'll pause briefly and then return to the conversation with Daniel Burrus.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life, a boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness, is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit HarvestingHappiness.com to learn more.
What is your happiness?
And we're back, continuing the conversation with Daniel Burrus that originally aired in June of 2018. We're talking about personal agency and positive disruption. Let's get back to it.
So, Daniel, in the last segment, we were talking about identifying trends, regulation, and technology as 3 segments to look at when looking for opportunities for creating this positive disruption. I'd like to talk more about how to become the disruptor. So how to be more of the initiator rather than the recipient of life circumstances.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, first of all, for those that want more, if you go to BURRUS, some people might type in IS, you will find on that website a lot of articles about how to do this. But there are 3 categories, and then I'll talk about the disruption. One, remember, is technology. Second is the demographics. And the third is regulation that allow you to see the future. Those give you hard trend certainties. And then one other comment, soft trends are based on assumptions. They're not based on future facts. And in those cases, you can change them if you don't like them. So your question was disruption and change. How can we turn that into an advantage? And, the kind of change that people don't like is the kind that affects them personally, and they didn't see it coming. But most of those changes you could have seen, you just weren't looking. Hey, when did people get burglar alarms? After getting robbed. When do people start working on their health? And it's when the doctor says, hey, you're huge. You got to get up. You got to walk around a little bit. Get out of that chair. So we react instead of anticipate. So in the case of disruption, when you take a look at the book and my blogs and so on, you'll learn how to actually identify these hard trends, these certainties, and again, they haven't happened yet, but you can see with confidence that they will happen, making disruption a choice. Because change and disruption are a choice when you see it before it happens. It's a default problem if you don't see them ahead of time. And again, that's why I was passionate about being able to do this. As a matter of fact, let me give you a healthcare example, since healthcare is always on our minds. And that is, I was just speaking to CEOs, a large number of CEOs of hospitals and healthcare facilities, and they all are making the same assumption all of us make, and that is that healthcare costs will continue to rise, and they are thinking that's a future fact. But in reality, That's a soft trend that can be changed. If we think it's a future fact, we'll just let it continue to rise because we all think there's nothing you can do about it. But in reality, you could wipe billions of dollars of waste out of healthcare if you used existing technology right now to transform for hospitals, purchasing, logistics, supply chain. If we used a technology called blockchain to bring transparency to healthcare prices, you wouldn't be paying $300 for an aspirin in a hospital. And you know what? We could actually lower healthcare costs. So you see, we make assumptions and think they're facts. And one of the things which can add to a lot of risk and less of a future than you could have had. So in the book, what I'm doing is really helping people separate future facts from future assumptions because they carry different levels of risks, and you can change a soft trend if you don't like it. For example, I don't like rising healthcare costs. Well, let's change that. We've got increasing obesity in the United States. Been a trend for over 15 years. You think you can't change that? Yes, you can. That's a soft trend. For example, my sister is an executive at Manpower, and 2 years ago, they gave everybody in the company, and by the way, it's a global company, they gave everybody globally Fitbits and have weekly and monthly challenges and prizes. Well, they've gotten off of cholesterol drugs. They've lowered their weight. In other words, they've actually got thinner, and they have less healthcare bills. In other words, they may not be able to change the world, but that's a soft trend. They changed it for them. So what are the things you think you can't change? You know what? I think that's an assumption. I bet you could change those. And one other that I think you will really like, and that is one of the tenets of the book. Again, there's a bunch of principles in the book. I've got 25 ways of shaping the future by being anticipatory. One of them is take your biggest problem and skip it. And I got a feeling you'll like this one.
I like that title.
Yeah. And you see, whatever problem you've got, well, that's not it. Hey, you're smart. You would have solved it by now if you're working on the right one. So I teach how to peel an onion, how to peel it back to find the real problem, which is actually quite solvable. That is one element to it. And another element to it is to skip the problem altogether. Let me give you a very simple, practical example that just came up for me just recently. I got a call from one of my nieces. She's got her first job. And she said, Uncle Dan, I can't save money. I'm trying really hard. By the way, she knows it's possible because she's got an older sister that is able to save money like crazy. But this younger one can't save money. She has trouble. She says, I'm trying to save money. I can't. Then I said, well, no wonder. It's the wrong problem. Why don't you work at how you spend money instead? If you change how you spend money, you'll save money by default. You see, she was working on the wrong one. All of us are working on the wrong one. That's why you can't solve it. In the book, I show how to peel the onion.
Well, you talk about healthcare. Let's go back to that because it's a great example. It's not about cutting healthcare costs. It's about improving lifestyle. So
exactly.
The costs are less. And that's the Fitbit solution, right? So I think it's important to point out that it's helping people see that there's another logic that's required to problem solve in this way.
Yeah, I'm working with a company right now. They've got a technology that'll be out and actually in kiosks and shopping centers and so on. And what you do is you look at the kiosk or your computer screen, and you see yourself. It's like a video. And what you do is you answer a number of questions. You know, do you smoke? Do you exercise? How often? You answer about 15 questions, and then you dial the clock ahead 20 years and see what you look like. And
fabulous.
and then you know what you can do? Change some of the answers and see how it affects you. And you know what? That helps to see the future. It helps you to become anticipatory. And what am I talking about? I want to predict problems before they happen and pre-solve them so I don't have them.
Yeah.
Well, that's a way. I'm giving you an example.
Yeah, it's a really, really good example. You talk about what it means to be an opportunity manager. Elaborate on that.
Well, and that gives me the opportunity to give everyone an action in this interview. And that is that we tend to crisis manage our lives. We put out fires, we deal with the current situation. And I believe we need to actively shape the future. We need to ask ourselves, what is the ideal future for you, for your family, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and then plan backwards getting more vague as you get towards the present. Why? Because now you know the direction. Yeah. And if you plan real specific for this year and next year, you may be going in the wrong direction because you didn't think of where you're really trying to head. So I want us to be thinking about that and to be the opportunity manager and not just the crisis manager. Here's an action for you right now. And that is, I would like you to spend 1 hour a week. By the way, this is doable. 1 hour a week, unplug from the crisis, the current situation. And by the way, hint, put this in your calendar, make an appointment, because if you don't, you'll just be putting out another fire. But this is about opportunity managing and shaping your future. So in that hour, instead of looking at all the things you're uncertain about, why don't you define all of the hard trend certainties that are shaping the future you are certain about, because that has power. Instead of looking at all, and when you come up with a certainty, tie it to an opportunity. Because I think a trend, whether it's a hard trend or a soft, is worthless unless you tie it to an opportunity. Then it, boom, pops into life. And you'll get a lot of them. And then big lists never get done. I don't want you to focus on the could do's or the should do's. Pick 1 or 2 must do's and make it happen.
I want to jump in here because I think it's important to clarify for people or bring to their attention. You talk about an hour a week. That is about what? About 9 minutes, 10 minutes a day?
Yeah.
8 minutes a day? 7.5 minutes a day. My math is terrible. Everybody out there has 7.5 minutes a day when they would normally be noodling around on the internet for nonsense to commit to being the opportunity manager and shaping our personal future. I mean, I get it. It's very little investment for a huge return.
A huge return, because we all can do far more than we think. I was giving a commencement speech not long ago, and this last spring, and there's 2 things I'll point out very quickly. Number 1 was don't try to create success for yourself, because that's inwardly focused. Instead of a successful life, why don't you create a significant life, because that's focused on others. And secondly, think big about your future and realize you just thought small. There's actually a bigger big. Never do the big, always do the bigger big. And the reason I wrote the Anticipatory Organization is to help people to actively shape a positive future for themselves and for others, to not just react, but to anticipate, because there's so much opportunity. I want you to see it.
Thank you, Daniel Burrus, for being my guest today. The book, once again, is The Anticipatory Organization, Turn Disruption and Change into Opportunity and Advantage. You can learn more at www.burris.com, on Twitter at Daniel Burrus, and on Facebook, Daniel Burrus. Dan Burrus, thanks for being with me.
Hey, it was my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guests, Dr. Paul Knapper and Daniel Burrus, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere, from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lisa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.